Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. My name is Hanafi Amrul Ashraf bin Ramli, and this is my presentation on chapter 9 for my individual assignment. Consumer decision making is an important part of consumer behavior. It is the way of how we evaluate and choose product. There are three categories of decision making. First is cognitive decision making. What is cognitive decision making? It is a process from a rational perspective and regarded as a continuous process integrated in the interaction with the environment. Second is habitual decision making. It is a description of choices we make with little to no conscious effort. As an example, we go to supermarket, we just grab the things that we used to buy without looking at the brand and without making decision or have to think a lot about making decision to buy. And third is collective decision making. It is a situation where more than one person involved in choosing product or service. This is usually occurs in big corporation. A cognitive purchase decision is the outcome of a series of stages that results in the selection of one product over competing options. A typical decision involves several steps. The first step is problem recognition, when we realize we must take some action. This recognition may occur because of a current possession malfunctions, or perhaps we have a desire for something new. Once the consumer recognizes a problem and sees it as sufficiently important to warrant some action, he or she begins a process of information search. This search may range from performing a simple memory scan to determine what he or she has done before to resolve the same problem to extensive fieldwork during which he or she consults a variety of sources to amass as much information as possible. The internet especially has changed the way many of us search for information. Today, our problem is more likely to weed out of access detail than to search for more information. Comparative search sites and intelligence agents help to filter and guide the search process. We may rely on cybermediaries such as web portals to sort through massive amounts of information as a way to simplify the decision-making process. Now on to habitual decision making. There are two categories under the habitual decision making that influence people in making decisions. First are priming and nudging, and second is heuristic, which is the mental shortcuts. What is priming and nudging? It is one approach, that is to say, provide cues in the environment that unconsciously drive decisions. For instance, visual stimuli and odor of food successfully increase hunger by influencing dopamine actions in certain regions of the brain. It is like, for example, when we go to McDonald's, so the smell of the burgers stimulates our hunger. So that makes that is the reasons that make us buying the burgers or making the decision to buy the burgers. While for heuristic or mental shortcuts, this is where people rely more on various mental shortcuts such as brand names or price, or they might simply imitate others' choices. We may use heuristic or mental rules of thumb to simplify our decision making. In particular, we develop many market beliefs over time. One of the most common beliefs is that we can determine quality by looking at the price. Other heuristics rely on well-known brand names or a product's country origin as signals of product quality. When we consistently purchase a brand over time, this pattern may be a result of true brand loyalty or simply inertia because it is the easiest thing to do. Collective decision making is a situation in which more than one person chooses the product or services that multiple consumers use. Depending on the decision, the choice may include some or all of the group members, and different group members plays important roles in what can be complicated process. This role includes the following. First is the initiator. It is the person who brings up the idea or identify a need. The gatekeeper. It is the person who conducts the information search and controls the flows of information available to the group. In organizational context, the gatekeeper identifies possible vendors and product for the rest of the group to consider. Third is influencer. It is the person who tries to sway the outcome of the decision. Some people may be more motivated than others to get involved, and participants also possess different amounts of power to get their point across. And fourth are the buyers. It is the person who actually makes the purchase. The buyer may or may not actually use the product. And lastly, the roles of user is the person who actually consumes the product or services. For decision making in B2B context, many employees of corporations or other organizations make purchase decisions on a daily basis. Organizational buyers are the people who purchase goods and services on behalf of companies for companies' use in manufacturing, distribution, or resale. These individuals buy from business to business marketers that must satisfy the needs of organizations such as corporations, government agencies, hospitals, and retailers. Organizational buyers have a lot of responsibility. They decide on the vendors with whom they want to do business and what specific items they require from the suppliers. The items they consider range from the price and significance from paper clips to multi-million-dollar computer system and softwares. A number of factors influence the organizational buyer's perception of the purchase situation. These include his or her expectation of the supplier, for example, product quality, the competence, and the behavior of firm's employees, and prior experience in dealing with that supplier. Second is the organizational climate of the company, for example, how it rewards the performance and what it values. And the last is the buyer's assessment of his or her own performance. This is, for example, whether he or she believes in taking risk. Like other consumers, organizational buyers engage in a learning process in which employees share information with one another and develop an organizational memory that consists of shared belief and assumption about the best choice to make. Just as the market belief we discussed previously influence a consumer while shopping with the family on the weekend. The same thing happened in the office where he or she, perhaps with fellow employees, solve problems as they search for information, evaluate alternatives, and decide. There are, of course, some important differences between the two situations. And let's move to how does B2B make decision making compared to consumer decision making. There are several slightly differences between the two. First, the purchase decision that companies make frequently involve many people. including those who do the actual buying, those who directly or indirectly influence his decision, and the employees who will actually use the product or services. Second is the organization and companies often use precise technical specification that require a lot of knowledge about product category. Impulse buying is rare. Because players are professional, they base their decisions on past experience and they carefully weigh alternatives. Third is the decision often are risky compared to consumer decision making, especially in the sense that buyers can rely right on his judgment. And the volume of purchases is often substantial. It dwarfs most individual consumers' grocery bill or mortgage payment. And lastly, the B2B marketing often emphasize personal selling more than advertising other form of promotion. Dealing with the organizational buyers technically requires more face-to-face contact than when marketer sells to end customer. This is some of the things that we must consider important features when we try to understand the purchasing organizations make. Having said that, however, there are actually more similarities between organizational buyers and ordinary consumers than many people realize. As you would expect, the organizational decision-making process depends on the purchase. As when individuals choose, the more complex, novel, or risky the decision, the more the efforts group devotes to information search and to evaluating alternatives. However, if these buyers rely on fixed asset of supplier for routine purchases, this greatly reduces their information search and effort. There are by class theory of purchasing divides organizational buying decision into three types of range from least to the most complex. The decision-making dimension describe the purchase strategies of an organizational buyer. The three types are the level of information he or she must gather prior to the decision. Second, the seriousness with which he or she similar consider all possible alternatives. Third, the degree to which he or she is similar with the purchase. In every organization, there are several strategies of buying. Most organization decision situations have adopt three kind of buying strategies. First, a straight buy. It is a habitual decision. It is an automatic choice as when an inventory level reaches a pre-established pre-order point. Most organizations maintain an approved vendor list, and as long as experience with the supplier is satisfactory, there is little or no ongoing information search or evaluation. Second is a modified rebuy. Situation involve limited decision making. It occurs when an organization wants to repurchase a product or service but also wants to make some minor modification. This decision might involve a limited search for information among few vendors. One or a few people will probably make the decision. And last is a new task. It is a task involves extensive problem solving. Because the company has not made a similar decision already, there is often a serious risk that the product won't perform as it should be, that it will be too costly. This is when the organization design a buying center with assorted specialists to evaluate the purchase, and they typically gather a lot of information before they come to decision. There are several types of organization buying decision which based on the risk, whether it's low to moderate or high. For straight rebuy, the extent of effort, habitual decision making, based on habitual decision making with the low risk, and the buyer's involvement is through automatic reorder. While modified rebuy with the extent of effort is only limited to problem solving, and the risk is from low to moderate, and the buyer's involvement is one or a few, while new task, the extent of effort is extensive problem solving. The risk is really high and the buyer's involvement is many. The buyer's involvement are many. Now move on to B2B e-commerce. Business to business e-commerce refers to the internet interaction between two or more business or organization. This includes the exchange of information, of products, services, or payment. The internet revolutionized the way companies communicate with other firms and even the way they share information with their own people. Today, the majority of B2B companies, even those that still until recently relied heavily on old school techniques such as cold calls and mail newsletter, use social media to connect with customers and business partners. Under the B2B e-commerce, there are several things that need to consider. First, the prediction of the market. Prediction making is one of the hottest trends in organizational decision-making techniques. This approach asserts that group of people with knowledge about an industry are collectively better predictors of the future than are any of them as individuals. In prediction market framework, companies from Microsoft to Eli Lilly and Hewlett Packard empower their employees as traders. Like a stock market, traders place bets on what they think will happen regarding future sales, the success of new products, or how other firms in the distribution channel will behave. This is another example, as in the pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly routinely placed multi-million-dollar bets on drug candidates that face overwhelming odds of failure. The relatively few new compounds that do succeed to have make money to cover the losses of other incur. Obviously, the company will benefit. It can separate the winners from the losers earlier in the process. The company ran an experiment in which about 50 of its employees involved in drugs development, including chemists, biologists, and project managers. They traded 6 mock drug candidates through an internal market. The group correctly predicted the 3 most successful drugs. Prediction markets are one element of crowdsourcing, which describes the growing practice of soliciting ideas of new products and even advertising campaigns from a user's community. Under this model, companies no longer market to customers, they market with them. The wisdom of crowd's perspective argues that under the right circumstances, groups are smartest than the smartest people in them. If this is true, it implies that large numbers of consumers can predict successful products.